Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever, however you're listening. Hopefully, you're doing well. Welcome back to In Liberty and Health, episode number 458. Going pretty good. We're going to be talking about Thomas Massey taking on the deep state and doing some foreign policy reporting today as well. So, one more time, happy Valentine's Day for everybody. Hopefully, you're doing well. I'm going to be going out to dinner later with my wife, and we're going to be getting some wonderful steaks. Can't wait, steak and lobster. So very much so looking forward to that. And of course, I'm gonna get an old fashioned or two, maybe six. We'll see what happens, how everybody's feeling. But like I said, today's gonna be a good day. I did pin a comment there, so please listen to me and hit the like. I'd really, really appreciate it on the way in. And members are going to be getting a new video today as well because we had our opening show for Fire from the Gods on Tuesday night. And then we had a show opening for I can't remember what the heck the two bands' names were. I know one was Eden on Fire. Oh, Hallow's Eve, I think it was. But either way, both those are going to be going up. One's already up, and the other one will be up later today. So make sure you go check that out, hit a like, and please consider becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99. We're going to be talking about some of the stuff that's going on with the U.S. and Iran. Like a little bit of a slow news week when it comes to the U.S.-Iran relations. But there was a little bit of stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine, so we're going to talk about that. I got some thoughts on some of the latest China stuff, just like with Takichi and kind of like the relations there. So one more time, hit the like. Please consider going to tigerfitness.com. Use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that you support the Matovcik family, who also supports you by giving you this information, the wonderful supplements from tigerfitness.com. And of course, go to Fox and Sons Coffee, foxsons.com. Use code Kyle at checkout to let Steven know that I sent you. And without further ado, everyone, let's get into the rest of today's show. And one more time, good morning, everybody. Hopefully you're doing well. Abrogate D is Eddie Grimm. Good to see the both ends. Hopefully you guys are doing well wherever, however you're doing. I am full of energy today. Didn't get back from the show last night. We played up in Erie, and obviously I'm from Vandergrift, which pretty close to Pittsburgh. So it was about a 2-hour drive there, 2-hour drive back. Did it all last night. Got home around 12:30. Got up at about 6:30. Started rocking and rolling for the day. Got my workout in. Had a cup of coffee. Made breakfast, and of course, played with the daughter for a little bit. Now, the wife and daughter are off to go get coffee now. So, yeah, life is good, man. Life is really, really good. So today, like I said in the introduction, we're going to be talking about Thomas Massey taking on the deep state and the whole Epstein files release, and some of the reasons why I support Thomas Massey. Where I feel like I haven't really elucidated this very, very clearly throughout the podcast. I know I still consider myself a libertarian, but some of the ideals that a lot of libertarians would preach in today's society, or at least the U.S. as it is today, aren't quite achievable with the population and the way that things are, because you can't have a completely free society when you have a multicultural, multiracial society that is so loosely governed without people who are able to govern themselves efficiently. So right now, you can't quite consider freedom to be the largest value. You need a little bit more order to have that freedom that you're pursuing. So I guess let's get into the first things first. I want to talk about some of the Iran Israel stuff. I'm going to try to keep it to like an hour today, but we'll see how that goes. Everybody, if you could one more time, please hit the like button. And let's get into today's first story. So we got one from Dave DeCamp. And I think everybody knew this was kind of the case, that the U.S. smuggled thousands of Starlink terminals into Iran during protests. I had a TikTok and a short that actually did a decent bit of traction. It seemed like a lot of people liked it. That I kind of laid out. I think it was the culture minister over in Israel. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Had explicitly said that there were Mossad assets and the U.S. over in some of those protests over in Iran, which just to anybody seems reasonable. And I was listening to Trita Parsi on, I think the guy's name is like Julian Dory or something like that. Julian something. Scott Horton was on there, and they did like a 6-hour episode, I want to say. where they kinda talked about some of the Iran stuff, but, Trita Parsi I'm sorry, Trita Parsi was on with him, and he explained that, like, you're seeing some people saying, like, Iran killed 30,000 people within the course of, like, a month, which just does not seem realistic on the face of it. Unless they're, like, straight up dropping bombs on whole city blocks and stuff like that, which I don't think Iran would do, because they don't have a history of doing that. Um, there's no way they killed 30,000 people within the last couple months. So, Trita had said that according to all the numbers that he sees and the people he's talked to, the most reasonable amount seems to be between like 3,000 to 7,000, which I would lean is probably towards the lower end, but that also doesn't count the amount of people that I was listening to somebody else that was on Rachel Blevin's show who lives in Iran that had said that there were Mossad assets basically stabbing people because like the stabbing wasn't in accordance with the way that the Iranian regime would kill dissidents, which would be to shoot them or, hang them or do something like that. But there were literally people with, knife marks in their back. So that probably tells you that some of the protesters are being pushed, and then all of a sudden, hey, we're gonna stab you right in the back while you're protesting. So this is just kind of further evidence of what I think everybody who's kind of on this side of the political spectrum or foreign policy spectrum was kind of thinking. The U.S. smuggled thousands of Starlink terminals into Iran in January to support anti government protests inside the country, the Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday. The report said the State Department purchased 7,000 Starlink terminals several months ago with the aim of providing them to anti government elements inside Iran, and that about 6,000 were smuggled into the country in January after the Iranian government cut internet access as part of its crackdown against the protest. Now, I remember also there was a video of Asmund Gold, who I don't really know that much about him. Um, I'm sure there's probably some things I agree with him on, some things I disagree with him on. He's one of these bread tubers, streamers that you can rely upon to have the normal like the boomer con MAGA take. Which okay, that's fine. We'll agree on some stuff, we'll disagree on others. Where he was literally sharing a video of the protests going on, and then figure out they were actually pro-government demonstrations. So I don't claim to know exactly how far these protests go because how can you? It's very clear that there's some economic instability over there. And I think that is in part, if not in large part, due to the US sanctions and the stolen money from the Iranian government and the Iranian people, all the sanctions and everything. But I'm sure there probably is a degree of government mismanaging money because that's just what governments do and causing some of that instability over there. So, like I said, I'm sure some of that is natural and I'm sure some of it is astroturfed. So, anyways, continue on here. The report contradicts the Trump administration's claim that it didn't provide any material support to the protesters. The president was publicly encouraging the protests. Iranian patriots keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price, Trump wrote on Truth Social January 13th, which actually doesn't really seem to have happened yet. Canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of the protesters stops. Help is on the way. Mega, which just the lulls of irony here are too ridiculous. The unrest involved some armed clashes between Iranian security forces and Kurdish militants who reportedly entered Iran from Iraqi Kurdistan, where U.S. had a military presence. Iranian authorities said at the end of January that they had seized a shipment of 51 Starlink terminals in Iran's Kurdistan region, which borders Iraqi Kurdistan. So that's just a screenshot from the Iranian TV of Starlink terminals confiscated by the Iranian government in January. Sorry, taking a sip of Dr. Pepper. I think a lot of us anti-imperialists or anti-war people run on Dr. Pepper because if you look at Scott, he always has one. So mark one up for me and him. U.S. Treasury Treasury Secretary. Sorry. Scott Bessent also boasted about how the U.S. sanctions collapsed Iran's economy and sparked protests. At the Treasury, what we have done is created a dollar shortage in the country. It came to a swift and I would say grand culmination in December when one of the largest banks in Iran went under. There was a run on the bank, Bessent told a Senate committee last week. The central bank had to print money and the Iranian currency went into free fall. Inflation exploded. Hence, we've seen the Iranian people out in the street, which just like, how do they think this is going to play out? Like, you've had Iran under, I think Iran might be the third most sanctioned country in the world. Russia's number one. I don't know where Iran's definitely like in the top five. I'm pretty sure it's number three, but I might not have that right. all of a sudden this round of sanctions is going to do it. Jack, as always, good to see you. Very, very happy you're here. Yeah, I don't know what they expected to happen, but you're inflicting suffering upon the people when actually the JCPOA under Obama actually did work out well enough. And I do believe that Trump could have negotiated a better deal. I mean, he does at least have the negotiating skills and the charisma to kind of negotiate a deal like this. And he does have Steve Witkoff in his corner, who I do think sometimes has the right angle on things, but you have to approach these things honestly and with good intention. So if Iran's willing to get back into basically a deal like the JCPOA, where they have very, very limited Iranian enrichment, which they see as their natural sovereign right, and you're willing to compromise on that, then you could probably get back into a deal because the Iranians are just looking for sanctions relief. They don't pose a threat to the US. Like, it's ridiculous. They pose a threat to the US in the region if we continue to fuck with them. if we start dropping bombs on, Natanz, Fordo, and wherever else over there in Iran, then yeah, they may strike back at targets in the region. Specifically now, as we're going to cover in a story here in a little bit, that they just sent the Gerald R. Ford over there, where they had the Abraham Lincoln or the Lincoln over there. Now they have the USS Gerald R. Ford, which left Venezuela, is now over in Iran. So if we continue to do that, as I covered in the last show, Abbas Agarachi had said that they will strike targets in the region. Now, are they bluffing? I don't know, but I don't think it's a safe assumption to say that they are or are not bluffing. I would assume that they're probably not bluffing, because if you really do go out and strike them, it's not safe to assume that they're going to do the same thing they did back during the 12-day war in June, where they basically call you up and say, hey, evacuate this base in Qatar. It's like an empty corner. There's like a broomstick over there. We're going to blow that broomstick to pieces. Just make sure everybody's out of the way. We don't know if they're going to do that again. So, not safe to assume that they will or that they will not. Anyways, next story here that I wanted to cover. Trump says it will be very traumatic for Iran if nuclear deal is not reached. While departing the US, Netanyahu says he's skeptical of a deal with Iran, but that Trump is creating conditions for achieving a good one. President Trump said on Thursday that it would be very traumatic for Iran if Washington and Tehran did not reach a nuclear deal, echoing threats he made last year in the lead up to the 12-day war. Which, like, if you watch Dave DeCamp, or if you've been following this show for any period of time, this is kind of what they did. They used negotiations as a tactic to get Iran to let their guard down so that way they could attack them. Concerned that they are basically just filibustering with Iran to get enough assets into the region, and then they're going to strike again. One more time. We don't know how they will react. I don't think it's a safe bet to say that they're going to say, oh, well, we'll do the same thing we did last time. With all these assets in the region, I mean, they evacuated a base in Syria just recently too. So that's not a good look. And you keep hearing about people evacuating different areas in the Middle East. I know I've seen stories all over Twitter. I don't have them pulled up right now, but it's usually a sign that they're preparing to do a little FAFO, as they say, which I kind of cringe at that now because Pete Hegseth has made that so cringy. We have to make a deal with Iran, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic, very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal, Trump told reporters a day after holding talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, which he's at the White House like every month. I think 7 or 8 visits in the U.S., and I think 6 of them were at the White House, and 2 were at Mar-a-Lago. We had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, it's going to be very difficult for them. Nope. Exit that out of there. The U.S. president was asked if there was a timeline for a deal and said, I guess over the next month. They should agree very quickly. Netanyahu said as he was departing the U.S. that Trump was creating conditions that could lead to a good deal, though Israel's perspective, a good agreement would require Iran to impose limits on its ballistic missiles, a demand that is a non-starter for Tehran and likely designed to collapse diplomacy. So as I've covered in previous shows before, and as we're going to cover again right now, that basically they want Iran to give up its ballistic missiles and all nuclear enrichment, which the nuclear enrichment isn't weapons grade uranium. They would still need to master the fuel cycle, or I think either they do have the fuel cycle mastered, but basically like they would still need a little bit of time, and it would be pretty obvious to everybody that they were breaking out towards a nuclear weapon if they were going to do that. If they abolish or at least greatly limit their ballistic missile system, then how are they supposed to defend themselves from a strike from Israel, which they're likely going to do again, or the US. it's a complete and total non-starter to tell a country to basically drop all your arms. I mean, any country in the world that would get rid of their military equipment it's like national suicide because at that point you have no defenses. Are you really going to fight off the US with ground troops? I mean, they'll just bomb the living shit out of you. And that's kind of Trump's MO is to drop bombs. He doesn't like to do boots on the ground operations. They did that in Venezuela, but I mean, they got really, really lucky. Um, One thing that I don't think people covered enough when it came to the Venezuela stuff is that like they had assets built up in that region for months. So people were like, "Oh my god, this is such an awesome operation." Well, I kind of hope it would be if more than likely you had CIA boots on the ground because they said they authorized CIA action on the ground. So more than likely they had people scouting out the area. They probably had people infiltrating the government or at least getting close to people. And then you rained hellfire on a fucking city, killing dozens of civilians, dropping a bomb on an apartment building, and then you got the president got out. Um, yeah, that's pretty brutal. And for all the people celebrating that, yeah, I once again I consider Americans to be better than Israelis. We don't celebrate when we drop bombs on apartment buildings, specifically not in a Catholic city. I think that's fucking disgusting. Anyways, the talks with Trump focused primarily on the negotiations with Iran, Netanyahu said. The president believes the Iranians now understand who they're dealing with. I think that under conditions he's creating, combined with the fact they surely understand that they made a mistake the last time by not reaching a deal, conditions could emerge for achieving a good agreement, which it's really, really funny to hear Netanyahu say that they know who they're dealing with. They do, but the last time they thought they were in good faith negotiations, but Trump had said negotiations are going well when he knew Iran was or not Iran, Israel was literally sending fighter jets out to bomb Iran. And then Trump joined in shortly after. There's so many news articles that state that they knew this was the case, but then proceeded with talks anyways. The JCPOA took forever to nail out. I don't know the exact timeline, but I mean, it wasn't like 60 days. You don't give a country 2 months and then say, all right, well, after those 2 months, we're going to commit to military action. That's just not how things work. Negotiations take time and you can't be impatient with these kind of things. We're dealing with the life of people. I mean, thousands of people died in the 12-day war. Do you think that they're really going to look at us as like good faith actors and good stewards of the world if we're just dropping bombs on civilians and killing thousands of people at a time? I mean, look at Israel. Israel looks like a pariah state. And as I covered, I think in the last show, that basically the IDF now admits that the death count from the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, I know, oh my God, um, they now admit those numbers are right because there's probably estimates that are way, way higher now. I mean, I've heard people say like a year ago, the death count's probably upwards of 200,000 people. Do I know if that's true? No. But you could think probably between all the dead and buried under the rubble, the starvation, and just the untold human cost, because the Gaza Health Ministry gets their numbers from like basically triangulation. They have people come into the hospital, they count them, they get their identification, they have somebody else ID them, and then they count that as someone that's dead. Now imagine all the people that aren't identified that once again are dead and buried under the rubble. They say that number's like 10,000 or 5,000 to 10,000, I think it is, but I guarantee you that number is way, way higher. Just because the untold destruction of Gaza, I think they leveled like 90% of it. The Israeli leader also said he was skeptical that an agreement could be reached and laid out Israel's terms. I won't hide from you that I expressed general skepticism about the quality of any agreement with Iran. If an agreement is reached, it must include the elements that are important to us, the state of Israel, and in my view, the entire international community. Not only the nuclear issue, but also ballistic missiles and Iran's proxies in the region, which, you know, the extent that Iran really has control over the proxies in the region is hard to say. I am no expert on the Middle East. I'll be the first one to tell you that. Scott Horton would be the man to kind of elucidate this a little bit further. But that being said, um, I kind of look at this probably it's a lot like the way that the US has proxies all over the world. Are we completely pulling the strings of every single one of them? No, probably not. But like we may fund them, we may send them money, we may coordinate with them, but it's not like we're directing the ship at every single, turn. Oh, sorry about that. Um, Jack, I finally understand the disdain that people have against the tribe. It's not them being the tribe, it's the eternal victimhood from 80 years ago that have nothing to do with the problems. Well, yeah, exactly. And that interview with that certain individual on Piers Morgan kind of laid this out clearly, where it's basically we have this, right? this event from 80 years ago, and we're going to use this as a cudgel to tell you why you're a bad person, why you can't have a country, and why you have to do whatever we tell you to do. And we expect that. And we also require that you send us billions of dollars every single year. We require that you have speech laws in your country, and if you don't do exactly what you want, then we're going to label you as a bigot. Yeah, exactly. Don't care. Not my people. I don't care. I want my own country. I want to have a prosperous, functional society where I'm going to send my family off into and feel that they're safe. I don't care about your event that happened 80 years ago. It's tragic, but that's happened all throughout history. Genocide, famine, destruction, civilizations falling and rising again is the norm throughout history. The liberal order, and not like the blue haired, screeching liberal order, like the actual liberal values of equality of, not equality of outcome, but basically like equality under the law and fair trials and all the things that we kind of have here in the US. That's not the norm. That is the exception. Yeah, exactly. Usually, yeah, usually by them. Yeah. Yeah, once again, they're always somewhere in there. And who was it? James Potok, I think his name was, who was talking about all the anti-white stuff and how it's good that whites are going to be a minority in the US. Look up the early life check. Every single time it checks out. When you see some fishy shit going on, you do the early life check, and it's like, dude, come on. You guys gotta hide it just a little bit. So you know what? I'm gonna read this last story about Iran, and then I'm gonna run an ad. Let me get over here, take another sip. Mm. Actually, real quick, before I do that, where the hell are we? Shout out to channel members, Abrogate D's, B Cornish, Trey 50 Daniel, Rachel Wilson, Gage WL12, and Lee R. Silver. I appreciate you guys so much. Everybody else, please consider joining them for the lowly price for $2.99 a month, as you will be getting a new video today, about 50 minutes of the A Common Crown set from last night. No edits, no BS, just raw music. And eventually, maybe I'll start doing other videos. But as of right now, there are uncensored podcasts and lots of Common Crown footage all over there. So feel free to go check that out. We're going to finish up on this story and then run an ad, and we're going to get in some of the Ukraine stuff. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about Thomas Massie and why he's the greatest congressman in the U.S. Oh, actually, yeah. U.S. sends Ford aircraft carrier fresh off Venezuela operations to the Middle East, which is not a good sign. So here you can see the USS Gerald R. Ford leaves the Virgin Islands on December 6, 2025. The Navy's largest aircraft carrier is heading to the Middle East. The USS Gerald R. Ford will join the USS Abraham Lincoln and other forces already in the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility as part of the ongoing military buildup in the region. The Ford, the newest and biggest of the Navy carriers, is currently in the Caribbean, part of the large naval force that has been sitting in those waters for months as part of Operation Southern Spear. The carrier will now join the Lincoln, which was ordered to the Middle East in the last month and is currently operating in the region. Several outlets, including the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal, reported that the Ford's new orders, setting several U.S. officials task and purpose, asked the Department of Defense about the orders, and it said it had nothing to add. It's not clear what the escort ships will be accompanying the Ford, but the carrier itself will be bringing its air wing, which includes 4 squadrons of FA-18 fighters and 1 squadron of EA-18G strike fighters. The Ford is expected to take several weeks to arrive in the Middle East. President Donald Trump said the second carrier would leave soon. In case we won't make a deal, we'll need it, Trump told reporters on Friday, which is not a good sign. The United States is currently in negotiations with Iranian officials in Geneva, with Oman serving as a mediator. The Trump administration has repeatedly threatened Tehran with military action in support of anti-government protesters after the Iranian state used lethal force to stop demonstrations. Trump has also warned of more strikes following last summer's attack on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. So one more time, it just doesn't seem like these negotiations are going all that well. By the way, everybody, please make sure you hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. Really help me out and really keep this video going in the algorithm. But yeah, I don't think you need all these strike carrier groups in the region if you're just negotiating. As I said earlier and in the last show, I do think that they're just kind of positioning themselves in a way to make sure that if things go south, then which they inevitably will, or I'm sorry, let me restate that. Basically, they're using these negotiations as a pretext to just give them more time to build up assets in the region, and they're going to launch an air war in Iran. Do I know that for sure? No, but that's kind of what it seems like it's going to happen. And I hope not. I hope Trump pulls out an ace card. We really don't know for certain, but it does seem like they're going to be going back to strike Iran again. Meanwhile, the United States has been building up its military power around the Middle East for weeks ahead of a potential fight with Iran. Last month, F-15s with the 494th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron, which had previously taken out Iranian drones and missiles in 2024, returned to the region. The Vermont Air National Guard's 158th Fighter Wing, which had four deployed F-35s to Puerto Rico ahead of the attack on Venezuela, has sent fighters to CENTCOM after a stop in Europe. Additionally, ground forces were stopped putting anti-air missile systems on mobile platforms at the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, a base targeting a retaliatory strike after the U.S. bombed Iran in June. The Ford and its carrier group were previously sent to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea in October 2023 after the outbreak of the Israel-Gaza war alongside the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. Several of its escort ships went to the region, went to the Red Sea as fighting with the Houthis in Yemen escalated. The carrier left the region in January 2024 and returned to its home port. The Ford was on deployment to the Mediterranean Sea this past fall when it was ordered to join the armada of Navy ships in the Caribbean. Those ships, as well as several fighter jets, were deployed on what the Pentagon has called a counter-narcotics mission. The U.S. has bombed dozens of small ships that it claims are trafficking drugs, killing more than 100 people, although the Navy force has sat that out. The Ford and other ships did take part in January's attacks on Venezuela, which saw the capture and extradition of the Venezuelan president. All right, so that is all on Iran. So we are all up to date there. Let me take that off the stage there. Let me run an ad real quick, and we will get right back into the rest of today's show. All right, we're going to take a second a day to chill and tell you about the show's sponsors, Tiger Fitness. Make sure you go to the link below to get all the supplements that I use day in, day out, and beyond. As I always say, you do not need supplements to become all jacked and tan or to progress in your health journey, but they could definitely be a useful tool in that respect. So as you can see on tigerfitness.com, we got MTS Nutrition, Blackstone Labs, Ambrosia, HPN, Nutrix Research, America Labs, Alani New, Pump Chasers, there's Redcon One, Accent Sledge, plenty of different companies that pretty much have absolutely any supplement you could possibly think of. Pre-workouts, fat burners, BCAAs, electrolyte mixes, you name it, it's on there. So go to Tiger Fitness through the link below. Use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that I sent you. Get your protein powder, you name it, anything that's going to help you stick to your diet and hopefully achieve your health goals. All right, thanks. Back to the show. Boom. All right, everybody. One more time, hit the like button. I'd really, really appreciate that. And make sure you go follow me on Twitter at Matovcik343. This is my new Twitter. Hopefully I'll get the old one back. If you are on Twitter, please make sure you report the old account as impersonating me. I'm trying to raise as much noise as I can on Twitter, publicly chimping on Twitter. People say that does something for the Trump administration. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't really believe that. Public chimping does not do anything to help you get your Twitter back, because I've tried for almost a month, or not a month. It's been like 13 days. I'm being a little dramatic, but so far, absolutely no luck. I pay for premium and everything, and still absolutely nothing. So, and they actually just charged me again for premium, which is even more infuriating. After I even went into my app store and canceled my membership, still nothing. So, anyways, let's continue on with this. The stories in Ukraine. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Share this tab instead from our dear friend Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. EU considers establishing military bases in Ukraine, which is just going to be a total no-go for Russia if they want to have peace. The European Union is considering establishing 2 military bases in Ukraine to train new soldiers. Russia has threatened to strike Western forces inside Ukraine. We've been discussing the training of the Ukrainian soldiers on the soil of Ukraine. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said Wednesday, we've identified 2 training centers that could be used for that purpose. Western countries have trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers over the 4-year war with Russia. The conflict has become a war of attrition, and Kiev is facing a manpower shortages. Ukraine has attempted to fill its military with conscripts, which as we covered in a show a few weeks ago, that they're starting to have mass desertion. Russian officials have threatened to attack Western troops deployed to Ukraine, responding to a European proposal to deploy troops to Ukraine last month. The Russian Foreign Ministry said all such units and facilities will be considered legitimate combat targets of the Russian armed forces. On Thursday, a Russian general warned that Europe was engaged in a military buildup against Russia, which the US is as well. The militarization of Europe is continuing at an accelerated pace, openly aimed at preparing for a military confrontation with Russia. Colonel General Andrei Sir, I'm not even going to try to say that last name. He added the territories are being rapidly fortified and the relevant infrastructure is being improved. On Wednesday, the EU approved an $100 billion loan to Ukraine. Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade Peter Szijjártó told reporters. Unfortunately, Europeans continue to undermine the efforts to establish peace. Yeah. So I get why people kind of do this whole deal where they claim that there's this huge divide between the US and Europe, but there really isn't that much daylight because Marco Rubio was one in the administration who was removing the no Ukraine and NATO. And Trump also kind of went along with this whole peacekeep or, deploying peacekeeping troops to Ukraine, which is just a non starter for Russia. And he also endorsed the idea of using frozen Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine. Um, I've seen a lot of people that would probably consider themselves plan trusters. This Peter St. Onge, and as much as I like him, Tom Luongo, kind of like getting all hot and bothered about this idea that Russia's going to return to the dollar system because of some leaked memo that was allegedly from the Kremlin. Okay, well, we should probably establish that we don't know who that was exactly made by, who was exactly for. Could have just been some staffer. I don't know, but let's be honest here. The idea, Peter St. Onge had threw out a tweet saying that BRICS is over. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. The US is still supplying weapons. They just gave them $100 million. They're still providing them intelligence after, like, the CIA literally gave them the intelligence to strike Putin's home. You really think Putin's like, oh yeah, you know what? I fully trust the US again. I don't think Putin takes the West that seriously. And I think this is a fatal error that a lot of people are making in their geopolitical analysis when they think that Russia is basically on the same page as the US and it's the EU driving the Ukrainian war. I do believe there is a large degree of that, but I don't think that Putin's on the same page. I think both Putin and Xi kind of look at Trump and the United States kind of largely is like, well, yeah, they're doing all this stuff against us, but like the multipolar world is here and it's going to stay. It's probably not going to change for a while because now the US is fading in its overall influence on the world. And we are to a degree withdrawing to our own hemisphere, but we're still kind of funding proxies that are there to basically fight a war against China and to contain Russia and contain China as well. So um, I don't think that's going to happen. It's dubious at best. Let's say that. So, in this article, a lot of people were circling this around, saying that basically, like, the Ukraine war is going to come to an end. Zelensky's been saying this pretty much the whole time, but his definition of a ceasefire is a little bit different than the idea that I think even Trump and Russia are kind of going for. So, from the New York Post, Zelensky begs Trump, give us a ceasefire, vows to hold elections as Russian drones bombarded Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he was feeling a bit off, a little bit of pressure Saturday after President Trump called for him to get moving on a peace deal, which he's been doing this forever, but he's not willing to do anything to actually get him to the table. The Ukrainian leader said his country would hold elections, something that Trump has put pressure on him to do if Washington gets Russia to agree to a ceasefire, which, once again, why would they? Give us a ceasefire. President Trump can do it. Push Putin, make a ceasefire. Then our parliament will change law and we will go to elections. Zelensky said at the Munich Security Conference. We can also offer a ceasefire to the Russians if they hold elections in Russia, which just they're not going to do. The comments come after Trump appeared to once again blame Zelensky for the standstill on negotiations. Russia wants to make a deal, and Zelensky is going to have to get moving. Otherwise, he's going to miss a great opportunity, Trump said Friday when asked by reporters if he was still demanding Ukraine hold elections by the summer. He has to move. Zelensky cast a defiant tone when discussing possible Ukrainian land concessions as part of an overarching deal, casting doubt on the belief that they would lead to an enduring peace. It would be an illusion to believe that this war can now be reliably ended by dividing Ukraine, just as is an illusion, just as it was an illusion to believe that sacrificing Czechoslovakia would save Europe from a greater war, Zelensky said. The embattled Ukrainian president had also had harsh words for his wartime opponent, Russian President Vladimir Putin, painting him as an isolated, eccentric warmonger. Putin does not live like ordinary people. He does not walk the streets. You will not see him in a cafe. Putin consults with more Tsar Peter and Empress Catherine about territorial gains than with any living person, Zelensky said. Meanwhile, 5 Ukrainians were killed and 13 wounded Russians on strikes overnight. The Kremlin launched 112 drones at Iskander M ballistic missile at Ukraine around 6:30 p.m., according to the Ukrainian Air Force. Ukraine was able to shoot down about 90 drones, but at least 18 made it past their air defenses and attacked 11 different targets in the country. 2 spots were hit by falling debris from downed drones, and the Ukrainian Air Force said. Russian aerial assaults targeted 31 settlements in Ukraine's Kherson Oblast, killing 2, including a 52-year-old man, and injuring 4, the Kiev Independent reported. Elsewhere in Ukraine, Russian forces bombarded 41 settlements in the Zaporizhia Oblast with 655 strikes, killing 1 and wounding 3 others. A teen boy, 16, and 23-year-old man were injured in the strikes during Ukraine's Sumy Oblast that also killed a 44-year-old woman. So as everybody kind of seems to be coming to the conclusion of, basically, this war is going to be settled on the battlefield, and there's not much that Vladimir can do other than basically just say, hey, we're going to have to give up those oblasts to Russia. I mean, there was a deal on the table, and the EU had largely squandered that. The EU and the West had largely squandered that. It was not Boris Yeltsin, but basically there was a deal on the table back right after the war broke out, and they decided, all right, well, fuck it, we don't want a deal. So, well, now you get what you get. And Trump is trying to do this playing both sides, where he wants to say that he's trying to settle it by putting pressure on Putin, which what pressure can you apply to Putin? Are you really going to deploy the 82nd Airborne or something like that over to Russia? Well, you're trying to fight a war in Iran, so you can't really deploy those assets over to Russia. So what pressure can you put on Putin? They put more sanctions on him. Whoop-de-fucking do. They're already the most sanctioned country in the world. Do you think 10 more sanctions are going to do something? No, because they're finding a way around it. And this goes back to the idea that it's absolutely ridiculous to think that now all of a sudden the sanctions are going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back and bring Russia back to the table, and then we get the US and Russia together against China. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, because Xi and Putin are now much closer than Trump and Putin. Trump, and despite all his flaws, and as much as I criticize him, he's actually doing a good job, better than Joe Biden, at least. I shouldn't say a good job, but a better job than Joe Biden was at diplomacy and stuff like that, because like the Joe Biden administration just didn't do diplomacy. Trump's at least negotiating. You can argue that it's in bad faith, which I kind of think the China negotiations are. But at least they're trying. So I don't see this split really happening. So one more time, everybody, please make sure you hit the like button. I'd really appreciate that. Consider becoming a channel member for $2.99 a month, or just leave a super chat, as that would mean a lot to me, and go far away in supporting the Matovcik family, who supports you by giving you this information and also brings you the great Tiger Fitness supplements. So I think I smoked that little shill in there pretty good. Let's now talk about our dear Thomas Massie, the greatest congressman. So we're going to start off by this video, and we will kind of roll through a few little clips and a few reasons why I just absolutely love Thomas Massie. And anybody who doesn't, I think there's something wrong with you, because not only is he funny, he's just right on basically everything.
I didn't see him on that. Congressman Massie, in the last week, you would have called on President Trump to apologize to Barack Obama, and you're standing here with Congressman Khanna at a press conference implying that the president is a pedophile protector. Are you hating on Trump to try out for CNN? I didn't crack out.
Are wearing off.
Oh, really?
Oh my God, I just absolutely love that video. This is kind of Massie stepping into like that 1980s Ron Paul era, where he that one guy was saying something to him, and he's like, I think we should put you on a diet. You've had too many cheeseburgers. I just love it. I really, really do. And this is sorely needed, and people can knock Thomas Massie all they want. I know people kind of criticize his immigration stuff, but I kind of agree with him on the whole ICE deal. Like, what evidence do we have that increasing the ICE budget by 4 times will lead to more deportations? So far, we have no evidence that that actually will cause the immigration issue to be fixed. Trump's rhetoric alone did largely, not 100%, but largely fix the immigration issue on the border. But mass deportations are not happening. And as I've laid out in previous shows, it is ridiculous to think that 22,000 people, which is largely what the ICE force is 22,000 people, uh, to expect them to round up millions of people and send them back home. That's not how you do it. Jay Bemke. Thomas Massey's battles is exactly like we had to face down Sam in. Yeah. Thank you, Jay Bemke. I appreciate that. But he's basically holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire, and it's so amazing that you see so many people battling him on this. Like, he's just trying to get the president to do what he campaigned on, but he's the enemy. Like, I don't get it. So that's the first one. So, maybe we should pull up actually the SAVE Act. I want to make sure I got this right and give you the full context. Bipartisan Policy Center. I'll actually pull this up and we're going to read from this so that way we're all here. Now, I don't know how reliable this is. Oh, hey, Steggs. Cheers to the greatest congressman in U.S. history. My man, thank you so much for the $20. I really, really appreciate that, Steggs. I know you're coming right up to when your child is due, so hopefully um the old lady's doing well, hopefully the baby's doing well. But cheers to you, man. We'll give you this one.
I got G's. The fuck out the way, kid. Got G's.
I appreciate the money. Once again, thank you so much. And hopefully everything is well for you, man. But yes, Thomas Massey is absolutely incredible, and I'm very, very glad we have him, because if we didn't have him, who else would we have fighting for us? So let's kind of roll through this here, and I want to make sure that we kind of understand this, because I'm not 100% sure what the SAFE Act is. I'm sure I probably have some kind of cursory understanding of it. This piece refers to the SAVE Act as introduced in January 2025. The Save America Act, passed by the U.S. House of Representatives on February 11th, includes both a documentary proof of citizenship requirement outlined below and a requirement that voters provide a photo ID in order to vote. Okay, so that's what they were talking about largely recently, which I think he did vote for this, and people said he didn't. Introduced by Representative Chip Roy, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act requires voters to provide documentary proof of citizenship at the time of registration. Both parties agree that voter registration should permit all eligible citizens and only eligible citizens to register and vote in federal elections. Although instances of non-citizen registration and voting are rare, the SAVE Act's goal of ensuring that only citizens can register to vote is important. But there are easier, more cost-effective ways to improve citizenship verification that don't create new barriers for eligible voters. Here's what you need to know about requiring proof of citizenship registered to vote. Citizenship is already a requirement to vote, and instances of non-citizen voting are rare. Many eligible citizens don't have access to documentary proof of citizenship, which this seems to be like left bias. There are better ways to verify citizenship that put the responsibility on the government, not voters. The SAVE Act could have unintended consequences for election officials and the election administration. The SAVE Act needs more time and resources to be implemented well. Okay, so basically, the thing is basically just so that way people have to provide ID to vote. $20. Let me go over to here. There's a false rumor that I voted against the Save America Act today. I'll vote for it when it comes to the floor. I voted against a rule that allows it to get a vote, but the rule also suspends the House rules and allows spending bills to come to the floor with no 24-hour notice. So actually, here he highlighted, provides that the requirement of Clause 6A rule for 2/3 vote to consider a report from the Committee on Rules on the same day it is presented to the House, waived expected resolution to any resolution reported through the legislative day of February 13th, 2026, relating to a measure continuing appropriations for fiscal year ending on September 30th, 2026. So basically, it would just be that they could throw bills on the floor and without allowing the government or the proper channels to basically read them and vet them and decide whether or not they want to vote on them or not, which I think is a reasonable thing to vote against. He didn't vote against the SAFE Act. He voted against that ruling where basically they could just throw out, omnibus bills and without sufficient time to read them and see what they're spending their money on. So one more reason why Congress Massey is the best congressman we got. So we're going to go back to here, and I said protect this man at all costs. And the Protect Taiwan Act is the same type of bill we entertained before the war in Ukraine escalated. The intent is to draw the U.S. into a committal position in another foreign conflict. There are only 2 states beginning with a T, and neither are Taiwan. I voted no, which, oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I didn't blow that up. So basically, he's going against the whole Pentagon and basically both parties on this one, because as hopefully I've laid out competently in the last, like, the entire 5 years that I've been doing this show, the big U.S. push right now is a war for China. I know everybody says, oh my God, look at the new national security strategy. They're changing it up. They're finally facing back in the Western Hemisphere. They're not. They just authorized the largest arms sale to Taiwan in U.S. Taiwan history. They're still funding the Philippines. They're now bonding this strong tie with Japan because they see Japan as an unsinkable aircraft carrier against China. They're not changing foreign policy. They're not. They're still funding the proxy war in Ukraine. Not to the same degree that they were, but Trump's not abandoning them, as he should. He had the chance to do it, but he still continued to press on with the war. So let's go over to, I got this 2 more to go, and then we'll probably round her up here. Let's watch this video here. So this is Congressman Thomas Massie against Pam Bondi, which just was awesome.
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you-
Watergate.
When I don't answer the question the
this
way you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
Now,
where the
I want to know at
transparent-
what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because
So the reason why they're bringing this up is because Les Wexner had left Jeffrey Epstein in charge of an estate, if I remember this all correctly, which you could actually go to, I think it was in Liberty and Health episode number 28 with, this is going way back, Reed Coverdale and Eric Jackman, where we covered Epstein. It would have been like November 2021. It got taken down off YouTube for bullying, which, okay. We covered Les Wexner and obviously Daryl Cooper, Whitney Webb, Derek Brose, probably even Ian Carroll. All these guys have done way more extensive looks into Les Wexner and his relations to Jeffrey Epstein. But I believe he had a large sum of money that he left, and he was like some coach or something, like in charge of some school in Ohio. And he left a large fortune basically to Jeffrey Epstein, and no one really knows why. And they redacted his name when they knew he was a co-conspirator for Jeffrey Epstein. This is Thomas Massie basically nailing Pam Bondi to a cross over this.
our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not. And it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it. And you
Just, I don't know how anybody walked away from this thinking that Pam Bondi looked good in this exchange. She didn't. This looked bad. It was not good for her. And Trump is still pumping her, saying that she did really good in this whole exchange. Dude, this reminded me of like Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci, which is just like inject that into my veins. Just nailing him to a cross. I love this kind of stuff. Yeah, it absolutely is. And like her cadence, everything about her, she just seems so wildly incompetent, but Trump is enabling her. So once again, the buck stops with Trump. He has completely allowed her to act like this fucking moron. She's so stupid. And she's lied through her teeth about the Epstein files and the Epstein file release. So yeah, man, it is bad. Anyways, one last story. Everybody, please make sure if you're watching, you hit a like. Stiggs, thank you so much again for the $20 super chat. We'll read this last one from Politico, and we'll get on out of here. Massie becomes first Republican to spar with Bondi during the House Judiciary Committee. The Attorney General accused Massie of having Trump derangement syndrome. Thomas Massie was the first and so far only Republican to spar with Attorney General Pam Bondi during her hearing Wednesday before the House Judiciary Committee. The Kentucky lawmaker asked Bondi about redactions in the Jeffrey Epstein files that failed to comply with the law Massie helped shepherd to passage last year. He pointed to instances where the names of victims are not shielded, but the names of Les Wexner, a businessman and client of convicted sex offender, is blacked out. Who's responsible? Massie asked. Are you able to track who in the organization made this massive failure to release the victims' names? Bondi replied that Massie, who's become a vocal critic of President Donald Trump, was a failed politician and a hypocrite. Within 40 minutes, Wexler's name was added back in, Bondi said. Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed. Which, yeah, just these exchanges are so awesome. Bondi then accused Massie of having Trump derangement syndrome and refusing to press for justice for Epstein's victims during previous administrations. So, like, I want to address this real quick, that when people accuse Massie of having Trump derangement syndrome, it's so weird to me that a guy who endorsed Trump 3 times, if I remember correctly, I think he endorsed him 3 fucking times and voted for him. I believe so. Voted for him 3 times and endorsed him 3 times, has Trump derangement syndrome. He didn't have Biden derangement syndrome when Biden was in. He didn't have Obama derangement syndrome when Obama was in, because Thomas Massie got elected in 2012. He has his principles, and he sticks to those principles, and he sticks up for what's right. And he even defends Trump when Trump deserves to be defended. I would defend Trump if Trump deserved to be defended. It just so happens that there's not many times that he does deserve to be defended anymore. I didn't realize it was this bad. I haven't looked at the testimony, but heard it was bad, but not this bad. Yeah. Every video I've seen, she does not look good. It looks very bad for her. Bondi then accused, I'm sorry, this is bigger than Watergate. Massie told Bondi, this cover-up spans decades and you're responsible for this portion of it, which is just objectively true. Wexner said he had severed ties with Epstein in the aughts and around the time of an earlier investigation against the late financier, and when Wexner realized that Epstein has illicitly taken money from him. The assistant U.S. attorney told Mr. Wexner's legal counsel in 2019 that Mr. Wexner was being viewed as a source of information about Epstein and was not a target in any respect. A legal representative for Wexner said in a recent statement, Mr. Wexner cooperated fully by providing background information on Epstein and was never contacted again. Okay, so there's nothing else really that I want to read from here. So we'll close this out. Okay. I liked Rubio's speech. I have not watched Rubio's speech, but I've kind of made it like a life goal to do everything I can to explain why Rubio is awful. He literally represents the Miami industrial complex and lied about like where his family came from. And he's largely been the one that's been driving all the worst things that's been happening in the Trump administration. He's largely been like the driver of it. So like all the foreign policy decisions that have been absolute disasters, he's largely been at the forefront of it. And then he pretty much even said in a recent testimony that basically that the war in Iran and like the situation, the negotiations with Iran are largely just for Israel. Like he basically admitted that like the ballistic missile program can't be a thing for Iran because it threatens Israel. Marco Rubio is also the one who largely wants this influx of immigrants coming into the West, like the Cubans, Venezuelans, and all of them, because they vote for him, they support him, and they support his idea of taking over the whole Latin American region and then remaking it in their image. If the US is doing fine, we could have that conversation, but it's not. Um, Rubio, as much as he may have said some of the right things, he is a snake in the grass. He's a neoconservative who has voted for and supported all of the worst policies over the last, ever since he got in back in, I think it was 2011. Supported every single war other than I think it was like one campaign in Syria under Barack Obama. Other than that, he has supported all the worst policies, including pretty much all the funding to Ukraine up until about 2023, when it became abundantly clear that Ukraine could not win the war. He supported restricting American speech with, on the basis of criticizing Israel. So yeah, he may say a few right things every here and there. Be very, very judicious about this. And when I see the entire cabal or Zog backing him, that's enough to kind of take a moment and be like, all right, we got to watch what we're doing here, because I don't think it's anything good. So I know this is a pretty information-packed show. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully it was entertaining. Hopefully I presented everything in a compelling way. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I think I'm going to wrap here, though. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of In Liberty and Health. Please leave a like on the way out. Please leave a super chat if you feel so inclined. Please check out the Great Megalodon, which is my Substack, where we just talk about things heavy metal. It's a lot more lighthearted than this. Make sure you go subscribe to my other YouTube channel, 5 till Midnight, where we do just kind of same stuff as this a little bit. Every Monday night, airing 8 p.m. Eastern time. And what else do I got? Nico and I haven't streamed in a couple weeks, but we're probably going to stream again this week. I know he's been super busy, but that's that. And then, of course, Common Crown dates. Go to acommoncrown.com to find everything out about A Common Crown. Heading back to the studio in 5 days, which I can't wait. Not me, but Jen and Steve. So hopefully they get everything plugged up there. I know we'll hopefully have another song or two out here in the coming months, and hopefully we'll have a CD out before the end of the year. So I think that's all that. We're going to be playing at the Vortex in Akron, Ohio on March 7th. That's our next show. So everybody make sure, if you're in the Ohio area, you come check that out. And other than that, I think we're going to call her a day there. Everybody, thank you so much. Stags, thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Channel members, I appreciate all of you. Where are we? There we go. Abrogate D's, B Cornish, Trey 50 Daniel, Rachel Wilson, Gage WL12, Lee R Silver. Everybody else, consider becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Matovcik 343 is my new Twitter. And with that, everybody, have an absolutely fantastic week, and I'll see you next time.